Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Last week I embarked on a mission to build something using some of the awesome tools available in the React ecosystem. I want to build something that will help me test the limits of full stack development with TypeScript and Next JS. Guess what I chose? Twitter. Of course, I didn't build the entire Twitter in a weekend. I was able to build as much as possible and the results were pretty great. Halfway through the progress, I decided to record everything and share it with you all. I broke the whole session into two parts. I promise it's going to be worth your time. I decided to use some awesome tools to complete this mission. I chose T3 Stack to build my frontend and backend with the NextJS, TRPC, and Tailwind. PlanetScale for a seamless serverless MySQL database. Prisma for awesome developer experience that connects really well with the relational database. Upload to manage my file storage and file uploads. Clerk for a seamless authentication experience. And finally, Vercel to host the app. First, I'm going to install the T3 stack. Let's call this Twitter clone. I'm going to be using TypeScript, Prisma, Tailwind, TRPC. Yes, initialize Git repository. Yes, run npm install. Great, the app is installed. Let's cd into the app. Open that. Open that in VS Code. Awesome. So T3 app comes with the source directory template and not the app directory. So we are going to be using source directory. So we need to modify the index.tsx. Kill all the boilerplate stuff. Next thing I want to do is set up my database from PlanetScale. Let's go to the dashboard. Quickly create a serverless database. So there's going to be a MySQL database. Select EU Central. And then, yeah. Great. The database is initialized. Now I can get the connection strings. So first I need a password. And then I can connect with Prisma. Copy the env. Paste it in my env. And replace this. Copy schema.prisma. Paste it in my schema.prisma. Now I can create a test table to see if things are working. This will be removed later. Can do npx prisma db push. There you go. Now I think if I refresh, I will have my first table. Look at that. That was quick. Next, let's go to Clerk and set up Clerk. So Clerk is great for managing users in your application and also for authentication. I already have an account, so I'm going to go to my dashboard. Create an application. And I will be using username and password. Make sure that I have the right fields here. Username, password, yeah, that's all we need for Clerk. So our app is set up. There is a guide for us to get started. Let's copy the env file, env variables. Paste it in our env. And we can look for the NextJS guide. First SDK I need is Clerk NextJS. I'm going to install that. Clerk is installed. The next thing I want to do is wrap the entire application with Clerk provider. So I'm going to head to my app and bring in Clerk provider from Clerk NextJS. Pass in all the props. So now the entire app is mounted inside a Clerk provider. The next thing I want to do is create sign in and sign up pages. In order to do that, first I'll create a folder. Sign in. This has to be a route catcher syntax. So all routes inside this folder will be redirected to the sign in page. I'm going to bring in sign in from Clerk Next.js. Next thing I want is sign up page. I'm going to copy that, rename it to sign up. Instead of sign in, we need sign up. Awesome. Now we need some environment variables to make sure that Clerk uses our sign in and sign up pages. So in order to do that, I'm going to copy these variables here. So we also need to protect our routes using a middleware. I'm going to bring that middleware in, create a new middleware file. Copy paste that. And it's going to take a custom after auth function. So here I can check if my session is authenticated or not. So the auth should have an user ID and the auth should not be a protected route. So if it's a public route, then it means it can be accessed without authentication. So here I can create a sign-in URL and I can redirect the user to the sign-in page using next redirect. If not, I can just go to the next middleware in the chain. Great. Now this will ensure that all our routes are protected. The config make sure that all our routes are protected, all our APIs are protected, and this after auth function will make sure that we redirect the user to the sign-in page. The app is running. Let's check this out. There you go. When I try to access any page, I'm going to be redirected back to the sign-in page. Now I can sign up, test user, and I can give a random password here just to see if things are working. Once I sign up, I'm back to my home page. Great, we now have Clerk. I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup before I head over to my Storybook setup. So feel free to skip to the next chapter. I've done a few things now. I've created a root layout component that is going to be similar for all our pages. So here I can display a header, and using Clerk's signed in wrapper, I can create a user button that will appear on all the pages. I've also created a document that is going to modify the HTML. And finally, our index sign in and sign out pages are going to have a couple of headings with some styling. So if the user is signed in, we're going to see a user button. There you go. Now I can sign out. I'll be back to my sign in page. So our authentication is set up now. Now it's time to synchronize Clerk's users data into my database. Clerk manages our users and creates the users for us, but we need to be able to copy those users into our database to control some relationships. So in order to do that, I'm going to create a webhook in Clerk that is going to talk to the webhook whenever a user is created. I have my app exposed using local tunnel. I can copy this, add an endpoint here, and and create an API endpoint called API user. The event that I'm looking for is user created. That's it. A webhook is created. Now, every time when a user is created, Clerk will try to hit this endpoint. We can configure this endpoint in our next app. So I can go to my API directory under pages and create a new file called user.ts. Now this API is responsible for saving the user into our database. I'm going to quickly do that. So what I've done here is I've created an API route called user. Every time when a user is created on the Clerk panel, it is going to hit this endpoint and it's going to save the user data into our database, but we haven't defined our schema yet. So let's just log the user for now and see what we get back. So the endpoint is failing to be connected from Clerk. The reason for that is because it is not a public endpoint. So I'm going to go into my middleware and add the endpoint that I created as public. Now let's try this again. Let's head over to the testing section, select the event type that we have subscribed for, and hit send example. There you go. We have a success, and now we have the log in our console. So this is going to give ID, all the user details, but we are going to use only the ID. But we will be using this when we design our user schema. So we now have an authentication. We now have a database. The last two things we need is upload thing and Vercel. Let's go ahead and do that. First, I'm going to go to upload thing, create a new app, maybe. There you go. Now I can copy these again and put it in my env.local. Great. With these, I'll be able to easily connect to my S3 bucket that upload thing is giving for us. Let's head over to Vercel and create our Vercel application. So I'm going to create a new project. It needs a GitHub repository, so let's quickly initialize one. New repository called clone. Copy this, add the remote, and make sure to add everything to the repository. First commit. There you go. Let's push this. Great. Let's head over to Vercel and connect this project. There you go. Filter clone. Yeah. So I need to set the environment variables here too. So I'm going to copy all my environment variables and paste it here. There you go. Awesome, guys. The Vercel deployment is done. First time it failed because of some mistakes that I had in my application due to some ESLint rules and DB synchronizations. It's all good now. We have the app. Let's see if this works. Ooh, that's awesome. Let's sign up. Vercel user, password, and some junky password, don't mind. Great. So far, everything looks good on Vercel. I just need to do one last thing in Vercel. I need to change my functions region closer to my database, which is Frankfurt. Yeah. So with this enabled, Vercel and DB, PlanetScale DB will be able to communicate quite easily. We now have everything to start our application. I'm going to bring in Storybook and start building some components. Storybook is completely optional. If you want to try it out, please feel free to try it out. I'm just going to bring in Storybook. I already have the installation command, I guess. Storybook latest init, yeah. There you go. Storybook is installed. We can already start the Storybook. But for Storybook to run with NextJS and Tailwind CSS, I'm going to have to do some things. I started my Storybook server. It runs in port 6006. Storybook comes with a set of predefined stories for you to get started. So great, we have Storybook now. So I'm going to start creating some components and try to render them in Storybook. For that, I'm going to be creating a new folder called components. And inside that, I'm going to create a folder called icons. Icons are the first thing that we are going to bring. A story file called icons.stories.tsx. So I found a great library for getting icons. It's called React Icons. This has a collection of a lot of icons that I can easily use. I'm just going to collect all the icons and put it in the icon story that I've created. First thing we need is the Twitter icon. So I have included the BS Twitter icon from React Icons, and I have rendered it on my story. So we can already see it is rendering here. So I'm going to bring in all the necessary icons from Twitter and render it in the story so that we have like a complete package of all the icons. Just going to quickly import all the icons I need. I already have a list of icons, I'm just going to use them. There you go. These are the complete list of icons that we would need. So it's super straightforward to customize the icons with React Icons, and it's an awesome library. Pretty awesome, right? So now let's go and build our left navigation bar. The left navigation has got a bunch of links that you can use to navigate around. So the first thing I'm going to do is build this navigation link component. Create a new folder called navlink and a new file called navlink.tsx. Let's define a prop for this. So this is going to take an icon, so of React node, and basically a text. I want this to be a small flex container that has a bit of gap. And the first thing I want to render is the icon. And I want to render the link using, actually this whole thing has to be a hyperlink. I'm gonna use next link for that. So this is also going to take a 2. It's a of type string. href, yeah. And this is going to take a bunch of class names. Let's just first render this and style this. So props.text. Great. So we got a basic layout here that looks pretty close to Twitter. I'm happy about it. So now it's super easy to modify the nav links. I can render all the links here, but I'm going to activate only the home page for now. So let's build our left navigation component. So I'm going to do this inside pages under layouts. So I'm just going to call this layouts and left nav.tsx. So this is going to return a UL, and inside that I'm going to create my list items. So this is a nav link. Text is home. Icon is, there you go. This is our home link. Before I introduce all the other links, I'm just going to create the basic layout for my page. To do that, I'm just going to go to the layout.tsx. I'm just going to create a section here. This is going to be a flex row with no gap. And now my page container is going to have 3 components, which is the left nav, the main section and the right nav, which we will build later. So now we need to style them a little bit so that we get the desired flexbox layout. Now the left nav will be a fixed container. Let's give this a background. I think it doesn't need a background, maybe a border right. So border right of let's see 2, and then see if this works. Border slate 100. I've also brought in some basic fonts from Google. I'm just going to use that. I'm going to import class names, which is a library for concatenating class names. This will be pretty handy because I'm going to be using Tailwind utility classes. I don't have to render font name classes everywhere. Ooh, look at that. I mean, it got rendered. That is good. But it is not inside our sign-in component. So we need to wrap it inside our sign-in component. So I'm just going to remove this. This is not needed anymore. Okay, now this will be rendered only if we have a sign-in. And probably this needs to come inside sign-in container. There you go. Let's create a legit user and then sign in. There you go. That was nice. Let's also render the Twitter icon on the top here. It is also going to be part of the part of the left navigation. So it's BS and then BS Twitter. There you go. Nice. What I want to do now. Now this whole container has to be a little bit smaller. So probably I need to wrap the whole container inside a div. So maybe this doesn't need to have flex after all. So I can do flex here, flex call, gap of 1 rem. There you go. Okay, I'm just gonna do some styling here quickly. So this is the fixed container, and I have the container that is supposed to float right. So I'm just gonna do a margin. So this has to be a flex container. I can do ML auto here, so that goes to the right. There you go. Let's give this a padding so that we have some controls. So this is going to have a padding top of y of maybe radian. That's good. And this is going to have a bit of a space that is 1/2. There you go. Great. Now the Twitter icon has to be indicated to the right. I can do with Tailwind classes. Maybe it has to be 0.5 radian. Now I can populate the nav list navigation here. Just gonna quickly copy paste and get the icons. So this is going to be explore, profile, notifications, messages. There you go, guys. This is awesome. I'm really happy about it. It's not as close to Twitter, but we got it. We got the desired look and feel. So I'm not going to build everything here, but I'm just gonna have it for the look and feel. I'm just gonna build home and probably bookmarks and profile. The last thing I need in the list is actually the tweet button and the profile icon, profile button. So I'll just quickly build that. In order to do that, first I need to create a button component. Yeah. Just gonna render this, and probably I don't need to. I think I can create a variant, right? Variant is going to be primary, secondary. This is good enough for now. So now with class names, I can do this. I can do BG blue, maybe 700, maybe 600. Yeah. So this will be rendered if props.variant is primary. If it's secondary, I'm not gonna worry too much about secondary for now, but yeah, let's just get the primary layout of the button. That's pretty bad. It's fine. Let's start this out. There you go. That's nice. This is good enough. Okay, now the next thing is I want to do is build that user button. Okay guys, after hours of debugging and checking the Clerk documentation, I was able to style the user button that is offered by Clerk, and the final output is this. Still don't know if there is a way to display my username, but yeah, we can figure that out later. The next thing I want to do is build the centerpiece. Let's do that. But before doing anything, I'd like to comment all the code and make sure that we get the same thing in Vercel. While Vercel was deploying my app, I made some small changes. I fixed some errors that actually caused the deployment to fail. Nothing design level, just code level changes to organize things a little better. So in the real app, I need to sign up. That's better. So I think I can do a new username, maybe a new Twitter user, and then password. Just look at that. That was pretty cool. Let's waste no time and build the centerpiece. In the center section, I'd start off by building the small components here. Main component is the place to tweet, the avatar, and the tabs. After doing this, I'll start modeling the database. I have defined my home route, so I'm just going to start populating this page here. It's going to be a section flex row items center and justify between. So now the tabs is going to be a client component. So I'll just build this out here in my components. I'm gonna call this tabs. Export default function here. Let's define some properties. So the props is going to take a generic, which will determine the type of our tabs. So I need a default tab and I need a list of tabs and probably the children, which is going to be a function that returns a React. Now the children is going to get the active tab, which is going to be passed down to the parent, and then based on the active tab it is going to render the children. So this whole thing needs to be a client component. So I'm just gonna make this a client. I will set some state here. It's going to be default. So this is going to be extends string, and state is also of type D. So this is going to be active tab, and need a setter. It's going to be set active tab. Now I can render the tabs here and pass in the active tab to the children, to the parent. Great. Now I can loop over my tabs and render the tab. in p tag. Yeah, I should do it. So this whole thing is going to be a tab. Maybe it's better if I define a component here. And it is going to have some properties which we will pass in a minute, but this should do it. To just render the tabs. Tab, pass key, extend string, missing key. Key can be the index, I don't mind. Let's render this here. So it's going to have, first I need to pass in the tabs so that the types are inferred. It's going to be for you. So now I know for sure I can either pass for you or following. So the default is going to be for you, and it is going to take a children as a function which gets the active tab, and I can decide now which tab to show. So if it's for you, then I'll be showing this section here. Just return something for now. And if by default I'm just gonna show, well, basically for you and for following, both tabs are going to essentially show different components, display different components, but I can build it out. Awesome. Following. So there you go, we get some nice type safety here. I can pass the tabs and infer types of tabs. Great, let's check this out. Okay, it is rendering. So now we need to style this a little bit. Let's quickly do that. So this is going to be this whole thing is going to be this tab is going to get like this tab is going to be mixed over the gap. Maybe specify the name, and I want the icon center it, and I can say basis here. So I'm going to do it. But yeah, let's check this out. So let's get something to now. Still need to style this over here. We'll do that. There you go. This is nice. Let's activate the click handlers here. So I'm just gonna pass in an on click. Now that I think of it, this whole thing could have been a button. Semantically, it is a button. But yeah, it's fine. You can do that later too. So on click, I'm just gonna set the active tab to active tab not D. Yeah, it's good. Let's check this out. There you go. Great. Now let's render the children. The tweet component is going to be generic for common for both for you and following. So I'm just gonna first build this and then render this by default, irrespective of the tabs. So I'm gonna create a new component here. Tweet section, maybe I'm just going to return the div again. The first component that I'm going to build is the avatar. I don't think Clerk has a user avatar component, so I guess we might have to build that. So in my components, I'm going to create a new folder called avatar. TSX. I'm not using Storybook now, so I feel that new components and consuming the app is much faster. So, yeah, but I can get one Storybook. Who cares? Okay, this avatar. So I need to so I'm gonna have to fix this and get back to the components. So I did add the remote patterns for images in the next config. Still, it did not work. So I went with the classic image approach. And I also cleaned up the styles a little bit because I was not doing the styles right. So next is suggesting me to use the next image, but I don't want to spend too much time debugging that. So I went with the image approach. So there you go. We now have it also cleaned up the border a little bit. The border was not visible, but now it is visible. This is awesome. So that's great. So next thing I want to do in the tweet section is to build this whole layout here. First thing I need is a text input box. So always let's define a props here. Defining the props, I'm just going to use React component props. What is that? It's here, and then pass in text area. What I want to do, can focus on styling this now. So it's going to be a text area and props. Do I want this? I want this in the home page, inside the tweet section. Okay, let's pass in some placeholder. Awesome. So what do I need here? Maybe I want to change. Yeah, now I need to make this a client component, as I already said. And this has to be a client component. This cannot be a server component. So there's a lot of interactions involved here. So let's define on tweet change. I'm gonna have to style this a little bit. So I guess all things doesn't need to be all. This is going to be low and this is going to be high. This whole thing's going to be up. There you go. Now I should have some let's start styling this. So I need to set some after styling this a bit and trying out various options, checking with ChatGPT, I was able to style the text box dynamically. So now if I type, the height of the text box will increase as I type. So that's pretty cool. So the next thing I want to do is create this small layout here. I think this should be straightforward, the actions bar. For now, I'm just gonna include the image icon and the tweet button. Okay, this is going to be a div. There you go. The first thing I'm gonna bring in here is image upload. There you go. There you go. It's pretty neat. And then the tweet button has to be on the right. I have the building blocks now for at least posting a tweet. So I think it's time I shift towards the backend. I'm gonna go and create my schemas, make my database ready, and hopefully we can start showing the tweets.